Manfred by Lord Byron. So last year I picked up a couple of Lord Byron's closet dramas. I've never really read all that much of Lord Byron's work, but I wanted to kind of explore his bibliography a little bit more. So, like I say, I picked up a couple of his closet dramas. Um, and last year I read Cain, which actually ended up being one of the best reads of the year for me. And this work, Manfred, is a work of gothic fiction. And it is also, if you know anything about Lord Byron, it will be very apparent that it is a work infused with a great deal of its author's own personality. And also, as an aside, this print on demand edition that I purchased has an absolutely dreadful cover. But as they say, don't judge books by their cover, because despite the um, terrible illustration on the front of this, it is actually quite a nifty little work, I think, and one that I greatly enjoyed. And I will give you the lowdown as per usual. So, what is the story of Manfred? Well, not a lot happens in this book. It's very brief, as was Cain. But in the work, Manfred is some kind of nobleman who lives in a gothic castle in the mountains. And he is pining for his lost love, Astarte, who, it's very vague, but the work mentions that he loved her kind of in a taboo fashion, that they really shouldn't have been together. And of course, this is, again, while it's never exactly stated, it's kind of, you can take it that there was kind of an incestuous thing going on there, because of course, Lord Byron, among the many women that he got down with in his life, one of them happened to be his half sister, I believe. So he himself was no stranger to taboo romance, and you get that vibe certainly with Manfred. Manfred is pining, like I said, for his lost love, Astarte, who is the only person to have ever understood him, and the only person that he has ever loved, and he is basically just miserable and fed up with life because of this. But Manfred is also something of a sorcerer, and he communes with various spirits and supernatural entities in an attempt to attain forgetfulness and forget about his doomed love and the internal torment that has wrought within him. But alas, the spirits cannot provide amnesia like he wants. And so what we get is a whole hell of a lot of tortured, grandiose monologuing in some pretty striking environs. And then there's also some Faustian elements in here, where Manfred kind of has dealings with some perhaps infernal entities. Uh, and then an abbot comes to see Manfred and kind of exhorts him to turn from his sorcerous ways and repent of his dealings with spirits and such. But Manfred's like, nah, ain't having it. I am who I am. No apologies, no regrets. And then in the end, as in keeping with the Faustian elements of the tale, the demons come calling for Manfred. But unlike in Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, where the demons drag Dr. Faustus to hell, in Byron's version of the Faust story, Manfred is such a badass that he tells the demons to kick rocks and that he will die on his own terms, which he does, but not before delivering one of the greatest final lines in romantic literature: "Old man, 'tis not so difficult to die." And so the story of Manfred comes to a close. And like I said, it's not long, it's very brief. In fact, it's a little bit too brief, I think. But yeah, so that is the tale of Manfred. So let's break it down and examine uh, its aspects and elements more intensively. So the writing in Manfred is good. It's as again, it's a closet drama. It's written in dramatic form. So basically, it's just um, almost exclusively dialogue, and so much of it is just monologuing, kind of melodramatic, over the top kind of monologuing. But you know, Byron is regarded as one of the greatest of English poets, and Manfred kind of evinces why that is. The poetry, even though it's very, very, very romantic, it's also sweeping and affecting and poignant at times. And again, it's just kind of you get caught up in it. It's very evident when reading Manfred why Byron is held in such esteem as a poet. So yeah, it's good if you like romantic poetry, if you like literature from that era, from that um, school of writing. This is cream of the crop right here. So writing's good. The characters now. Um, there aren't very many characters in this, and of course, Manfred is the central character, so I will restrict my critique basically just to him. Manfred basically is Lord Byron. It is just a facet of Lord Byron's personality. But the thing about Lord Byron is that his personality was such that it definitely leaves an impression, and such is the case with Manfred. This is the most moody and edgy thing I think I've ever read. Manfred is like just it's funny because Friedrich Nietzsche, if you did not know, actually held Lord Byron in very high esteem because Lord Byron kind of you might say was a prototype for Nietzsche's Übermensch concept because Lord Byron say what you will about the dude, he really marched to the tune of his own drum. He lived fast, died young. He was a poet, a politician, a playboy, and he ended up dying in a war that he just chose to go fight in that he didn't really have to. He definitely lived a quite eventful life, and he lived on his own terms. And so Nietzsche really kind of lauded Lord Byron, and like you can really kind of see why that is when reading Manfred because Manfred embodies the kind of romantic defiance that was kind of the uh, the underlying motif of that kind of movement, you might say. So Manfred uh, lives alone in a gothic castle in the mountains, and he has no real relations with other people because he's just so far beyond them. He's just on such another level. He just can't even connect to the common rabble. The only person, as I said, that he has ever had any real connection with is his lost love, Astarte, who he was probably related to. Again, even though that's not explicit, you can read into that. So Manfred is just like a total Chad. He just is again much like Byron himself, just kind of marching to the beat of his own drum. He's also a sorcerer, and he is unapologetically so. Because at the end of the book, the abbot comes and he's like, "Turn from your wicked ways and stop having dealings with infernal powers and come back into the fold of Christianity." And Manfred's like, "Nah, no, that ain't me. I am who I am, and I will not make any apologies for it." And of course, that immortal final line, "Old man, 'tis not so difficult to die," that really says it all. Manfred makes no apologies. He lives on his own terms, and he is kind of just, you know, an absolute ideological rebel, kind of, you know. So he embodies that kind of romantic defiance, which Byron himself largely embodied. And it works. It is a very striking character, and the probably the premier example of the Byronic hero, other than Byron himself, that is, in real life. Um, you know, the dashing rogue who bows to no one, and who lives their life on their own terms. That's everything that Manfred represents. And again, it definitely makes an impression, and it works. Manfred is a pretty fascinating and enthralling character, and the story is pretty captivating. Now, as for the story itself, it's not a long work. Like I said, you can read this in probably like a couple hours. Um, and I think it's a little too short, actually. Cain was also a very brief work, but that actually worked pretty well. I think with Manfred, though, there maybe could have been a little bit more added in here because um, he is not really going for a maximalist type of story here. It's definitely very scarce as regards backstory and such. Um, no scene is superfluous. No, line is wasted. It's all very economical, but it's kind of a little bit too lean at times. I really do think there could have been a little bit more in here plot wise. Um, just maybe to round it out a bit, make it be a little bit more full. But that's really the extent of my complaints with it. I freaking loved this. Honestly, it is Byron 100%. And again, it's just very striking because of that. It's the product of a man who's really pouring his own soul into it, and it works. It is fantastic. It's I don't know how that would compare with Cain. Really, I think Cain works better structurally, but this is like truly like just this is the true embodiment of the Byronic hero. So I don't know if I can really, compare those two, maybe apples and oranges, but dang, did I love Manfred. It was so fun. And again, it's just kind of so over the top and melodramatic at times. But once again, it makes an impression. And it's such kind of a, a fine example of kind of what the romantic movement was all about, what Byron's life in itself was all about. It's kind of a valuable artifact, perhaps, in that regard. So, to rate Manfred, I'm going to give Manfred an A minus. I think it could have been a little bit longer, had a little bit more flesh to it than it did because, as it is, it's very lean. But the poetry's great, and Manfred is such a great character. And kind of the themes of it, of just never back down, to thine own self be true, all that. It's just, you can't help but kind of get sucked into it, I guess. So, yeah, A minus for me. Manfred's a pretty great work, I think. So, yeah, Manfred by Lord Byron. Have you read Manfred? If you have, let me know down in the comments what you thought about it, whether you have agreed or disagreed with any of my takes here today. And if you haven't read Manfred, I could recommend this, especially if you're wanting to get into Byron, kind of explore Byron's work, or just kind of get a feel for Byron himself as a person, because this basically is him. A very unique individual, kind of distilled into a very striking fictional tale. And really, yeah, I could definitely just recommend this. I think it's a pretty great work, and one that kind of embodies all the aspects of romanticism in Byron, of course, himself, that have made both that movement and that man such enduring things in the history of literature. So, yeah, and as always, if you have enjoyed anything you've seen or heard here today, remember to hit that like button and subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And until next time, peace.